So thanks for joining us on this episode of the By Many or By Few podcast. 1 Samuel 14:6 says, "There is no restraint to the Lord to save by many or by few." And this podcast highlights the work of the few, individuals who step up and into sometimes difficult situations and fighting for our rights and many other things. And so my hope is that each listener will be encouraged by what God is willing to do by and through one person. You can subscribe to the channel below if you're interested in keeping up with state and local politics here in North Carolina. So today I am so excited. I've been excited for several weeks here to have a conversation with Ro Lawsin. Ro is running for Charlotte-Mecklenburg School Board. So thank you so much for joining me today, Ro.
Thank you for having me, Michael.
So, Ro, one of the reasons why I was so excited to talk to you is because you are in the hot area of education, where the education and the inputs to the children, the teaching of the children. This is something that's being talked about throughout the country and influencing elections. And so, can you tell me a little bit about what your plan is for this particular role?
First off, again, thank you for having me on your podcast. With respect to why I'm running and what I plan on doing, for many years now, Charlotte-Mecklenburg schools have underperformed. The leadership from the superintendent to the school board, and even at the lowest level from the principals to the administration, just aren't stepping up as far as providing all the necessary resources to give our children. And when I say our, I have 3 children myself, 2 boys that actually just graduated last Monday from Huff High School, and then a third, a daughter that's a freshman, a rising sophomore at Huff. And so having the 3 of them gone through the lockdowns, through COVID, learning virtually, and then just witnessing the many myriad of problems going on with CMS, whether it's lack of resources, despite a very fruitful budget. And when I mean fruitful, last year's budget was $1.7 billion. And per the words of Vilma Leak, Mecklenburg County Commissioner, it's not due to a lack of funds, it's due to the lack of properly appropriating the funds. It's actually, they've been misappropriating the funds, and now we're asking for another 400 million, and like every other bureaucrat, let's just throw money at it and think that that's going to solve the problem. But also safety has been highlighted throughout the year, and 30 guns from the start of school on August 25th to the end of school, 30 guns that have been confiscated on CMS campuses. Thankfully, that there was no incidents. I think 1 or 2 might have been fired, but no one shot, but still it's alarming for any guns, much less 30, to be confiscated on CMS campuses, both in the elementary school and on the high school level. But really what my plan is to inject new leadership, because in particular, my district, the incumbent has been in the office for 13 years. And I refer to her as the Nancy Pelosi of the school board. I mean, that's just, when you have no record to show for that amount of time, I believe new leadership's needed, a fresh voice, a change, a new direction. And so I'm not a teacher. I'm a former businessman, a retired Air Force officer, the former president of the Huff High PTSA, tennis coach for 3 years at Huff, but just a concerned parent like many other parents that want to see, something done that hasn't been happening, for all these many years. And so my plan, my 3 things that I'm focusing on are safety, student outcomes, improving student outcomes, and providing more accountability and transparency to the school board.
So there's a lot to unpack there.
Well, you asked me a loaded question.
No, and I want to get to all of it, because as a parent myself with 5 children, 10 years old and under, these are the issues that probably concern us most. Economy is one thing, but when you're talking about the children, that's a whole new level of importance to the parent. And so one of the things that jumped out at me about what you said was just the amount of dollars being thrown around. And I know you told me this before, that the current budget is $1.7 billion for just the Charlotte-Mecklenburg school system. And they're actively trying to raise that to $2.1 billion.
Yes.
And in effect, if you look at the test scores, the schools are failing. And so how does somebody even begin to to work on that problem?
Well, I think this is going to be a pattern here, a loaded question after loaded question, Michael. But to try and break that particular question down, my plan is to first, on the 2 things that I'm going to do on day one. One, I'm going to take a snapshot, because of the 3 things that are on my platform and big issues for me is accountability. I want to see where we are as a school district, as far as starting at the highest level, graduation rates, and then going all the way down to reading and writing proficiency. Because right now, both in 2019 and 2021, over 60%, and this is not an error, this is not something that's photoshopped, over 60% of 3rd graders are not reading at a proficient level right now in CMS. And this is both pre-COVID and post-COVID. So with respect to one of the 2 things I'm going to do, I want to take a snapshot from day one, where we are as far as both graduation rates, student outcomes, any and every metric, and then come back and revisit it 12 months and then see what did we do as a board. Whether or not I'm actually sworn in November or January. I'm not completely familiar of when my term would start, but from day one, when I take office, that's the first thing I'm going to do. Then the second thing on day one, I'm going to do a top to bottom audit of the budget to see where all the money's going, because everybody asks or says, follow the money. And if there's programs out there that year after year get funded or refunded and actually get more, but nothing has been accomplished, there's no success story, or more importantly, results to tout these programs, but that just continually year after year getting funded, then I'm going to explore that. I'm going to find out to see where the money's going. So in terms of trying to then, once I got a handle on where the money's going, because also with regards to the 2023 budget, what's alarming is they're using the budget from the ousted Superintendent Winston. And so when the interim superintendent came in, I don't know if he had enough time to just overhaul this budget, instead use it to go ahead and reach out to or apply to the county commission, Mecklenburg County Commission, to get approval for it. They get 60% of their funding from the state and 40% from the county. And to me, that doesn't make sense when immediately after assuming office, he is taking this budget proposal that was proposed by and put together by the outgoing superintendent. And much like everything else in government, very few eyes got a chance to look at it. I'm not sure if the board had a chance to look at it, but I'm going to tear the thing from top to bottom and look at it, but really take the previous budget and then compare it to the proposed budget and see what are those programs that are being funded, where are those programs failing or succeeding, and then start finding out, more importantly, is the money ultimately going back to the students and the teachers. So that's kind of where I'm going to look at as far as the money, because again, to put into context, you say, well, it's just Charlotte-Mecklenburg. It's Mecklenburg County, which the school district itself is the 17th largest in the country with over 144,000 students. So there's been talk that as big as it, because the average size school district in the country is 18 to 20,000 students, Michael, and we've got 144,000. And it is mind-blowing how big this is, and how can anyone, much less a superintendent with a 9-person board, try and manage this, especially when you have failed leadership on the board. So that's where I'm going to come in and try and just take a very simplistic approach, but really tackle the tough issues and look at this budget and find out where it is that we have shortfalls, where it is that we've got money going into programs that aren't producing results, and then take it back and then either eliminate the program or find a better program.
So would you include in programs that aren't worth the money this whole campaign to create transparent plastic backpacks to pass out to all the students? I keep hearing about this all over Twitter and other places. What happened there? Can you give us more information about that?
Well, based on what I know, and also talking with a current board member, it was a knee-jerk reaction to try and think that they can solve the gun problems, especially in light of what happened from August 25th to the end of the year, where they had 24 guns, in that time span. And the board was thinking that maybe if it might either be a deterrent or give those teachers and administration a better ability to try and detect if there was a gun being brought into school. But it's preposterous, because all I have to do is take the gun itself, wrap it in a t-shirt or a sweatshirt inside the backpack, and just walk inside. So almost $500,000, and because of some toxic label, Title 65 that prevented a safety hazard, it got shelved, and now they're trying to find a way to try and sell them off. So with regards to that proposal, it's just another example of the fraud, waste, and abuse by this board. And you add to that the severance that they gave the outgoing superintendent. They removed him for convenience instead of for cause. And when they did that, they had to pay him 2 years of severance of almost $500,000. So almost $1 million just gone of wasted backpacks and severance to an outgoing superintendent, when really they should have put him on a 90-day plan and given him a list of metrics and performance requirements that he had to meet. And in 90 days, if he didn't meet that, whether it's 90 or 120, I mean, the easiest one would have been 90 days, to then, if he didn't perform or meet those requirements, remove him for cause, and then avoiding the almost $500,000 outlay of severance that's being passed on by the taxpayers. And when people say, well, I don't have a kid in CMS, well, you still have a dog in the fight, because your tax dollars are going towards this budget, especially if you live in Mecklenburg County.
Yeah, and I want to highlight this again for people who are listening here, because so many people have just a vague understanding that, yeah, it's government, yes, it's public schools, and there's probably a little bit of waste going on, but move on to the next thing. But what we've just talked about here is $400,000 spent on clear plastic backpacks that literally cannot be used. And so it's the saddest story that I've read, where they're trying to find anyone to buy them at cut rate prices, but $400,000 that could have been used for education is part of that $1.7 billion that we're spending. And then Ro just mentioned another issue here, where we have an outgoing superintendent who, and we'll go into this in a second, who is owed $500,000 because the board didn't remove him in the proper way. And that's almost $1 million from that $1.7 billion that, honestly, in a budget that large, gets lost in the shuffle. And how many more expenditures and frauds and just wasteful spending is tied up there, when it should be going towards the education of kids who are underperforming in our school system. But tell me a little bit about the superintendent situation, because it sounds like that's been very unstable for quite some time.
Well, in the past 12 years, they've gone through 5 superintendents. And so this board's track record is not good, as far as whether filling or checking off a box to get in their opinion, the next best superintendent. With respect to what's going on right now, he has been removed. A former interim superintendent, Hugh Hadabaugh, is now currently the interim superintendent, and his contract runs till June of 2023. So in theory, parent like myself would be thinking that the board is going to go through a very exhaustive nationwide search for the most qualified candidate to fill that superintendent's role for the 17th largest school district. So I hope, which there are early signs that they are going to try and reach out to the community, to parents, to find out what it is that they'd like to see in a new superintendent, instead of just having closed door back room meetings on who they think should be the next superintendent. I am truly for trying to get the community involved and partnering with parents. I am going to be creating task forces. Now, it's nothing that hasn't been done before, but it's just not being done here, as far as the many things that are going to be going on, not just in my district, but in Mecklenburg County, that I think I can have a lot of concerned parents that would include business people, stay-at-home moms and dads, former teachers or retired teachers, educators, all coming together, at least in my district. And if they have a certain passion about, say, curriculum or student outcomes, how do we improve student outcomes? What about the budget itself? Have these teams, these task forces helping me, partnering with me, so that when we come up with solutions as a result of identifying the problems, the many problems that are currently going on, this isn't just Ro Lawsin saying, this is what I think. This is coming from the community. And when I mentioned early on about new leadership, well, this leadership is a little bit different than normal, because people look to the board to try to come up with answers. And while they need to provide the direction for the school district, I think this is, in light of everything that's going on with the country, looking at what happened in Loudoun County, looking what happened in San Francisco, how they removed 4 school board members. This now, I've got actually rights to a website. I haven't done anything with it but it's my belief that this is the year of the parent to try and actually not so much take back our schools, but actually be in better control of either what's happening to your child or what's happening to your child's school. And by doing that, my proposal is to have parents, concerned moms and dads partner with me and join me in coming up with these task forces to, from day one, let's go ahead and look at it. Let's address student outcomes. I think that because part of the 400 million they're asking is to give teacher raises. Well, what if you have an underperforming teacher that is not measuring up, that isn't teaching kids the right way, but you're just going to give them a raise? Well, then you're just actually exacerbating the problem. You're making it worse, and you're not actually either providing professional development, a better way to teach. I'm going to really explore teaching methodologies that back in the late 70s and the 80s, schools were doing great. But for some reason, once you get into the 90s and then the 2000s, we've lost our way. And especially such a big school like Charlotte-Mecklenburg, and I can't put my thumb on is one reason why we're underperforming. What I can look at is the teaching methodologies. Are our teachers teaching, especially from K through 3, the right way? And what is the right way? Well, I don't know that. So my solution is let's look at all those school districts where they are actually showing success. Their kids are reading at a professional level, if not at the highest level, and especially maybe in economically disadvantaged communities. If we can go ahead and take those programs, and I want to take anywhere from 4 to 6 and do a pilot program at our schools, as big as it is, on whether it's a 6-month or a 12-month thing, and then whether one stands out or we take different parts of one particular program from others and then incorporate it into ours, because at the end of the day, something's got to change. If we just continue down this road, that's the definition of insanity, doing the same thing over and over and over again, thinking that you're going to get a different result. And so I am going to try and just mix it up to go ahead, because at this point right now, with as much as we have afforded to us as far as money and budget, that we owe it to our children, we owe it to the families of Mecklenburg County to try and make a change. And I think a dramatic change is needed right now.
A lot of what you're saying, strikes a chord with me. I remember my mother was an educator, and she went back and got a master's degree in the early 90s. And she would come back and tell us around the table about things like these new methodologies being taught to teachers, like outcome-based education, that were just really eroding the foundation of the education system. So I think you put your finger on something. And honestly, just by asking those questions, I think that puts you in rare company, because I think the easy thing is to just go along with groupthink. And when you look at the outcomes here in Charlotte, really we need to mix it up some way, shape, or form to get different results. Now, you've mentioned a couple times also something that's top of mind throughout the country, and that's violence in guns in the school system. Of course, with Uvalde most recently over in Texas. What's the picture looking like here in Charlotte? You mentioned that there was already 24 instances of guns, at least known, in the schools here.
No, actually total 30. The 24 was last year before the end of the year. So basically from August 25th to the end of December. And then fortunately of the 24, there's only 6 more, but still 6 too many, because it just takes one. Look at what happened in Uvalde and all the number of mass shootings. That is a main concern, where a lot of parents are just afraid to send their child to school. And why wouldn't they be, when they don't have the confidence in this board, in this school district, to properly protect their children? And so I want to go ahead and examine, that $1 million that was just wasted on both the severance for the superintendent and the clear backpacks. Maybe they could put that in body scanners. What I actually want to try and do is something less invasive, and using thermo video to go ahead and, from the moment they get on campus in the parking lot, coming off the bus, that we've got video that we can use to monitor. That's a lot easier, less invasive, less time consuming, because when drop off my daughter at school, she has to take out her Chromebook, wait in line and make sure if it goes off, it goes off because of the Chromebook, not because of some metal object, heaven forbid, an actual weapon. These things I am not the smartest guy, but I like to try and apply common sense to much of what's going on. And this is no different. And I want to try and find solutions that make sense, that are within budget, and whatever that budget may be. Because I don't know what the budget is for the body scanners. But even if we went with body scanners, $1 million could have gone towards these body scanners to put them in more schools, instead of in the pocket of the outgoing superintendent and whoever the manufacturer is of these 46,000 clear backpacks, who's making out like a bandit, and that's where I just would like to try and really apply common sense management. But also going back to the whole teachers thing, if you look at this board, if it was a corporation, and especially with the size of budget and the number of people, it's got 19,000 employees, 144,000 students, that based on the performance year after year, if this was a regular company or corporation, everybody on that board would be fired immediately, starting with the superintendent. So the saying that elections have consequences, well, they certainly do. And this year, of the 9 board members, 6 district board seats are up for re-election or for election, and I'm running in District 1. And so it is my hope that we have just like-minded parents that want to step up, like myself, and really bring about change and not get it lost in all the minutia, which can easily be done, because on the school budget this size, it's really daunting. And a lot of people say, Ro, why would you want to run for school board? Well, because like yourself, Michael, I just can't sit on the sidelines anymore. I know that there's families out there struggling, especially with what's going on with our economy. Many parents can't afford to send their kids to private school. They're not lucky enough to get in a lottery school. They can't send their school because there's no school choice. So what I want to try to do is just break it down. What options do parents have? as far as getting the best education possible through a public school system. And right now, the choices are limited and the outcomes are dismal. So
Yeah, that's boy, can I vote for you right now? The last thing is, as we're bumping up against time here, is I wanted to go back to the fact that you've got a personal interest in the schools. As you mentioned, you have two who just graduated, one who's still in. How did you? What was these past 2 years like? With the pandemic and remote education, how did that work out for your kids? And where did you? It sounds like that in part spurred you to want to get involved.
Luckily, my 3 children, because I think everything starts at home. And part of my new campaign is going to be the Home and Hope campaign, where home identifies the problems between when students leave school and go home, and that disconnect. And whether it's not doing their homework, not doing the necessary things to be a good student, because you can't just learn it at school. There has to be some after school work, whether homework, studying, all that. Or maybe they're just not going home. Maybe you got those students that are homeless. Maybe you got those students that they are just involved in the wrong types of activities. I'm a big believer in sports or extracurriculars to try and go ahead and distract them or not lead them down a path that possibly could get them in trouble. So with regards to Home and Hope, Home is going to identify the letters HOME, and it'll be posted on my website here soon, as far as identifying problems, or the problem right now that, because let's make no mistake about it, at the end of the day, my 3 kids, I'm responsible for them, not the teachers. They're not responsible for trying to raise them. They're just there to try and teach them how to read, write, and do math. And then once they graduate to the next grade, advance and learn the things that they need to do at the respective grade. Hope, the Home and Hope, the hope is going to actually come with solutions. So as far as everything and why I'm vested in this, one of the things, the first thing I told you was about safety. One alarming thing that I'm still trying to get, even as a member, information is so scarce. But there was an investigation by WBT that identified a requirement by CMS to report any assaults, rapes, or sexual assaults to the Office of Review of the Department of Education. And this is an annual requirement. And in the many years that you can only imagine, again, I don't have the exact number. I don't know if it's in the hundreds. I don't know if it's in the thousands of either rapes, assaults, or sexual assaults that have happened on CMS campuses. But in his investigation by Nick Oshner, he discovered that only 2 reports of either sexual assault or rapes were reported to the Office of Review of the Department of Education in the past 10 years. And so you got to believe, I was at a board meeting just in March, and there was over 30 either former or current students, female students, that were either a victim of either assault, sexual assault, or rape. And in 10 years, Nick found out that only 2 of these incidents were reported to the Office of Review of the Department of Education. That's alarming. And with a daughter that's got 3 more years, that's why I'm in this, because we've got to have a school district and schools safe that protects our children, whether male or female. This is unacceptable. And so that's why I'm doing this. I want my daughter and daughters from all the families and sons and kids and students throughout this county to be protected, because you can't expect them to learn in an unsafe environment. And so that's number 1 on my priority.
Well, that's truly disturbing.
It is.
And it's not surprising though, because we saw the same thing happen in Loudoun County in Virginia, where there was cover-ups and all sorts of things where they weren't reporting what was happening to the kids. It was more important to save face than to actually protect the kids. Ro, you've got energy, you've got ideas, and it's clear that you really, really care about this issue. And I wish you luck in the election. When is the election for you?
It's November 8th. There's no primary.
Okay, so November 8th. when all the other elections are taking place. It's when you can vote for Ro. He's in District 1. I want to thank you again for joining the podcast. If people want more information or want to volunteer for the campaign, or importantly, make donations so that Ro can get signs out and can get literature out, they should go to rolawsin.com. That's ROLAWSIN, rolawsin.com. He's lucky enough to have gotten his name as a URL. I'm very jealous. Every $20 bill makes a difference. And so that support would be very helpful. I'll post that information in the video summary. I'll post links to his website. And for those of you who are interested, you can subscribe to the Buy Many or Buy Few channel below if you're interested in continuing to stay abreast of state and local politics, issues like the education of our children here in North Carolina. And we'll be talking to many other candidates and folks involved in local government here in the coming weeks. That's everything for this episode of the Buy Many or Buy Few podcast. And until next time, stand for what's right, even if you're standing all alone.